Well, Casey, why are you acting so surprised? We've always known that the WNBA doesn't know how to treat their stars properly. I'm not talking about the WNBA and the egregious way they treat the Great White Hope. Not only does this stomp not know how to create stars, the disrespect, the outright defiance, it is coming from the president of the Indiana Felines, which means this is coming from Caitlin Clark's own team.
For weeks, many of you watching have been saying it in the comments, on Reddit, on social media, that the WNBA was letting its biggest star get targeted. You saw the pattern, you noticed the hits, and you questioned when someone would eventually intervene. The answer has now been revealed, but not in the manner that everyone had anticipated. It was neither a commissioner's announcement nor a referee's whistle. 48% was a hard, cold number. The price of tickets to All-Star games plummeted to that extent as soon as Caitlin Clark's injury was revealed. This was no longer just a Jacy Sheldon hit. It turned into a multi-million-dollar error that revealed the league's true motivation and what it would take to finally safeguard their most valuable asset. From the hit to the injuries to the financial crisis occurring behind closed doors, we're going to make all the connections. Please use the like button to let us know that we're headed in the right direction if you're prepared for the true story, the one the league hopes disappears. Alright, let's cut through the clutter and go right to the point. We must go back to the exact moment it all began in order to see how a single injury might result in this degree of financial turmoil. July 15, 2025 was the date. The Indiana Fever were playing the Connecticut Sun, a game that has consistently been one of the most troublesome in the whole.
This was honestly, I'm not going to share this whole clip because I don't know how much she wants the video of her basically crying on the court to be circulated around, but she walks down to the end of the court. You can tell that she's in pain. You can tell that there's something wrong. She goes to the, what's it called, like stanchion or whatever, the thing that holds up the basketball hoop on the other end. She hits her head on it. She is fighting back tears and she walks straight over to the bench. Now, when she goes over to the bench, she starts crying, and I've honestly never seen Caitlin Clark cry on the court except when she lost the national championship game. She keeps it together no matter what is happening.
At last, the latent strain erupted. In a game that the Fever were winning, Clark executed a deft backdoor pass to a teammate with less than a minute remaining. She made touch with Jacy Sheldon of Connecticut as she turned to sprint back up the court. Although it would have appeared to the uninformed observer to be a standard basketball move, the outcome was instantaneous and disastrous. She was already dealing with a number of injuries during her 2025 season when Clark Grimps leaned down and grabbed her right crotch. However, the true narrative was revealed by what transpired subsequently. This was more than a short limp and a frown. This was not like the others. You could see it on her face, even though Clark made a typical effort to stay in the game and push through the agony. The straw that broke the camel's back was this. She held her crotch once more, slowed to a walk, and made her way to the baseline for another possession. The composure finally broke there, away from the play, while the camera was still focused on her. There was more to this than a poor play or a squandered opportunity. This was a player's emotional breakdown after bearing the burden of an entire league.
So, the big way they were able to neutralize Caitlin Clark, and I think it was almost an issue with Stephanie White as much as anything, is they were manhandling her. They were manhandling Caitlin Clark early in that game. Like, they had two hands on her. They were fully getting into the we are grabbing her and we don't really care. Like, that was their goal. Their goal was they were out there to maul Caitlin Clark. They had they had absolutely no intention of doing anything other than mauling Caitlin Clark. Like, they were not out there to play legit defense. They were there to maul Caitlin Clark as much as they possibly could.
Since many of you watching are aware that this is more than just physical suffering for an athlete like Clark, let's put this in perspective. This kind of vulnerability is uncommon for this player. This person has been hip-checked, elbowed, and shouldered throughout the season and has hardly flinched. Earlier in the season, this same athlete had to cope with both a quad ailment and a separate left groin issue. It wasn't just one hit that caused this breakdown. It was the result of months of physical torture, dubious officiating, and the tremendous burden of representing the WNBA. Just before her victory lap at the All-Star game, she realized that her body was failing her once more. It was difficult to watch her cry like that. Let's be honest. How often do you witness an elite athlete at the top of their game feeling so overpowered on the court? If you think this was about more than simply the physical anguish, please let me know in the comments. That unadulterated, unfiltered moment of hopelessness served as a warning. And a day later, that indication would become an official statement that rocked the league's finances. Every WNBA fan and league executive's suspicions were validated the following day. The announcement was broadcast on national television rather than in a team press release.
We do start our show, though, with unfortunate news out of the WNBA. Caitlin Clark announced today that she will miss both the three-point contest and the WNBA All-Star Game this upcoming weekend in Indiana after re-aggravating a groin injury in that final minute of Tuesday's win over the Connecticut Sun.
It became official in an instant. The league's biggest star, who had garnered an unprecedented 1.3 million fan votes, was left out of the All-Star Game. It wasn't just any player that wasn't present over the weekend. The major event was this. She was meant to be the star of the three-point shootout, the team captain, and the face of the entire Indiana showcase. She was the ticket for the folks who purchased tickets. This is the point at when the narrative changes. The WNBA is accustomed to handling PR-related matters. They are able to fabricate disputes about officiating. They can try to control the narrative and make statements about player behavior. However, they were going to encounter an issue that they were unable to handle. They were unable to ignore the crisis. Because this time, the repercussions were measured in dollars and pence rather than irate tweets. The financial dominoes started to tumble as soon as that announcement was made public. Furthermore, a well-crafted press release was not the proof. Everyone might see it in the open market. The figure was astounding and indisputable. This is the number that made all the difference. The hard evidence that caused the WNBA's financial dilemma to escalate from a player safety concern. The average cost of an All-Star Game ticket on the secondary market fell by 48% within a day of Caitlin Clark's injury revelation. Here, let's not hold back, in any market, an overnight price collapse of about 50% is disastrous. This was more than a little decline. The unseen hand of the market delivered this vote of no confidence. Everyone who thought the event wasn't worth it without its primary attraction, every reseller who had to cut their costs, and every fan who chose not to pay top dollar. They were all sending the league office a single, cohesive message. The product would be worth half as much without Caitlin Clark. Consider the knock-on effect. That 48% is more than just a figure on a screen. The host city's economy may lose millions of dollars as a result. It's the thumbnail's million-dollar error. The league speaks this language. In order to encourage competitiveness, this league established the Commissioner's Cup with a $500,000 prize fund. They are aware of money. They are aware of the stakes. Additionally, a 48% crash is an unavoidable warning. It's the first hard evidence of what analysts have been conjecturing about for months. The WNBA runs the risk of losing its biggest attraction and main source of revenue if Clark's ailments persist. Thus, the financial harm is evident. There is no denying the market's message. However, this catastrophe did not occur in a vacuum, that we now need to examine how the league allowed it to reach this stage. Since this financial catastrophe was not the result of a single unfortunate play, we must go back in time to find the answer. It was the foreseeable, nearly unavoidable result of a practice of disregard for which the league had been cautioned on numerous occasions. For months, fans and experts have contended that Clark was being subjected to a degree of physical abuse that went far beyond.
Gets pushed around, thrown to the floor during games, and teammates are standing there just looking, not doing anything. Sophie Cunningham will do something. While other players get a microphone put in front of them, doing their media interviews, while they regurgitate the same nonsense, the same word salad that Stephanie White Lies says, Sophie Cunningham will say,
Standard welcome to the league treatment. It was the target. It was deliberate. And mauling was the only function for which it was intended. I don't use that word. Analysts were using that word. Furthermore, this was more than one team tactic. The league's inaction was subtly endorsing this tactic. We only need to look back 1 month prior to the All-Star injury to the game on June 17th if you want the smoking gun. Unquestionable evidence that the league knew they had a problem and did nothing. Jacy Sheldon poked Clark in the eye during that game. A significant confrontation ensued after Marina Mibry of Connecticut violently pushed Clark to the ground. The most damning aspect of all of this is that the WNBA acknowledged in an official statement following the game that the officials had lost control and had missed crucial fouls.
Give that some thought.
The league formally acknowledged that its referees were unable to manage the game and keep players safe. A full month before the same kind of physical play resulted in an injury that would cost them millions of dollars, they were aware, in their own words, that the system had failed. It wasn't ignorance on their part to do nothing. It was a decision. And, because of that decision, an injury like this wasn't a question of whether, but when. And it was a decision that would soon compel Caitlin Clark's closest friends and family to speak up. It was more than just a meaningless press statement when the league acknowledged that they had lost control of the game. For everyone who witnessed the issue emerging, it was confirmation. However, as the physical play persisted, people's resentment started to flare up, even those in Caitlin Clark's own camp. The task of protection went to others because the league did little and even teammates occasionally seemed reluctant to intervene.
Things come. I feel like the attention and, whatever that is, I don't want to say I get used to it, but to an extent, like you do, and you just accept that's how it's going to be. People are going to criticize you. People are going to praise you, no matter what it is. When you're playing on this level and you have this type of spotlight, whether it's me, whether it's any professional athlete that's at the top of their game, that's just how it's going to be.
That the court's alleged inaction compelled action outside of it. Stephanie White, her own head coach, was in the forefront. She didn't hold back after that wild game on June 17th. Unlike other head coaches, she went straight for the league's officiating. Bad officiating is a league-wide issue, and everybody in the WNBA is getting better except the officials, she said. She didn't end there. I started talking to the officials in the first quarter, and we knew this was going to happen, she told the journalists, admitting that she had attempted to alert the referees during the game. It seemed obvious that it would occur. They must therefore take charge of it. They must improve. However, the dissatisfaction wasn't limited to the changing area. Clark's own family was affected. Her brother Colin Clark expressed what everyone was thinking on social media after the injury that ultimately kept her out of action on July 15th. For us narrative analysts, the removal of that tweet is nearly as important as the tweet itself. The message, which was swiftly removed, simply stated, "Make no mistake, this is on the reffing." It indicates that he revealed the truth from the family's point of view in a flash of unadulterated rage. The fact that it disappeared implies that pressure to stop an uncontrollable narrative was probably applied by an agency, the team, or perhaps the league. What do you suppose Colin Clark's true motivation was for removing that tweet? Was he under pressure to uphold the league's reputation, or was it his decision? In the comment section below, share your theory. It pulls back the veil when a player's family believes they must be hushed and a coach is publicly at odds with the referees. All of this points to one unsettling reality regarding the league's true priorities. In the end, the 48% price crash would reveal this truth. Now, let's make the last connection and reveal the purpose that this video's title hinted to. The league said nothing for months, while Caitlin Clark endured this unrelenting physical abuse. The prevailing narrative that they let to grow was that she needed to get accustomed to it, and that this was simply her welcome to the pros. The true tale behind the narrative begins at this point. Now that we're going into rumor area, this notion has been considered by analysts and reported by insiders for months. According to rumors, the WNBA's marketing approach was to purposefully minimize Clark's personal fame in order to foster league expansion. The idea was that everyone would benefit if they could demonstrate that the league was competitive, hard, and physical, not just the Caitlin Clark show. Allowing her to be roughed up without a barrage of obscenities could have been viewed as a benefit rather than a drawback in this situation. It demonstrated that the WNBA as a whole was a formidable force. However, that plan simply collapsed. That theory was shown to be a disastrous blunder as the price dropped by 48%. One indisputable truth emerged. right present, Caitlin Clark's physical well-being is directly related to the league's overall financial situation. The league didn't appear tough because of the desire to promote it by allowing its biggest star take the hits. They appeared careless as a result, and it immediately resulted in the removal of their top asset from the board, which caused a financial crisis. You are left with a single, straightforward question when you consider the league's leadership.
And this picture that I just came across, I'm like, what are we doing? Kathy Engelbert, she came out, it ain't been that long ago, like 2 weeks ago. Refereeing's pretty good in this league. In what league? What league allows this?
That is the true motivation that came to light. It has nothing to do with player safety. It has nothing to do with the game's integrity. It has to do with the bottom line. The negative publicity was acceptable to the league. The critical criticism and the angry tweets were acceptable to them. A 48% market drop was too much for them to take. There was no evil intent. It was a commercial matter. However, their actual priority was made clear by a business choice. When earnings are at risk, rather than when a player is in danger, action is taken. The league is currently in a difficult situation as a result of this whole mess. What happens now is the last question. For the WNBA, this is the new reality. The market itself has sent them a multi-million-dollar message, are attempting to develop. The 48% crash, the impact, and the injury weren't merely a string of bad things that happened. They were the direct outcome of a league's decision to overlook a harmful physicality trend until it appeared on their balance sheet. In the most harsh way imaginable, the market disproved their attempts to demonstrate that the league consisted of several players. The world just witnessed what happens when they don't. Therefore, the league must now demonstrate that they are safeguarding people rather than merely a profit center. What do you think about all of this? Please share your thoughts in the comments section below. Was the WNBA's 48% financial collapse the best or worst thing that happened this season? Every stage of the league's reaction to this financial strain will be monitored. Therefore, be sure to subscribe to the channel and enable notifications if you want to remain ahead of the news and learn the true story behind the headlines. Lastly, share this video with any other narrative analyst you know who needs to see this breakdown and get what's truly at risk.